Banjul's International Airport, January 2017. Stepping out of the black limousine is Gambia's longtime president, Yahya Jammeh. As he walks down the tarmac on the presidential red carpet for the last time, a small crowd of supporters gather, unable to hold back their emotions. After 22 years in power, the man who said he would rule Gambia for billions of years is now leaving the country, forced into exile.
He left for the love of the Gambia. He left for the sake of Africa. He left for the sake of the children, the women, and the development Gambia have been undergoing for the past 22 years under his leadership.
He had refused to accept election defeat and hand over power. West African heads of state set off on a marathon month-long negotiation, taking turns to get him to accept the results. Eventually, they gave Jammeh an ultimatum. Either he steps down, or 7,000 soldiers from the region steps into Gambia to take back control of the country. This is the moment the troops entered the capital. The crowds chant, "Jammeh, go." A final goodbye. For many, a moment of victory. The moment Gambia has decided. This week, Talk to Al Jazeera meets Gambia's men and women that stood up to Yahya Jammeh's rule and brought an end to his regime. This is 29-year-old Lieutenant Jammeh in December 1994, just after he took power in a military coup. He then promised to restore democracy and bring an end to corruption.
We have no plans to stay law. All we are here for is to set a just system and to put up structures that will ensure that what happened in the past 30 years would never happen again. And as to when we'll hand over, it depends on how soon we are able to put those structures in place. And as soon as those structures are in place, we return back to power.
Many Gambians believed in him, but he never returned to his barracks. He swapped his army uniform for a white traditional robe and changed his tone. He ruled the country with an iron fist, imprisoning critics and political opponents. Human rights organizations accused him and his security forces of torture and enforced disappearances. In April 2016, members of the opposition held a small, peaceful march calling for electoral reforms ahead of the December presidential elections. Among the protesters was Fatoumata Sandeng's father, Solo Sandeng.
My father went out to represent every other political party in the Gambia, to represent the young people, to represent everybody else in the Gambia, to say we need a proper electoral reform, at least make it better, at least make it suitable for all of us so we can have a level field so we could all play on. But then Yahya Jammeh was one dictator that doesn't want anybody to say, this is what I want, and you get away with it. So
you were a daughter of someone that is politically active under dangerous circumstances. You knew that holding rallies like that were dangerous.
yes.
Weren't you worried for your father?
I was always worried for him. Like I once told him, why don't you just leave Gambia? Why don't you go to Senegal? Why don't you? That was in 2013 when he was arrested. Then he was taken to court, acquitted and discharged. I was like, right, now you have escaped from these people. And they told him in his face that we were gonna kill you if we arrest you again. So I said, why don't you just go? He said he's not going anywhere. He said he's Gambian. He said he's gonna fight to end dictatorship in Gambia. He was taken to the NIA headquarters in Banjul, the NIA, the secret police that I was telling you, who worked with Jammeh to spy on people. And then he was interviewed. He was there. We heard photographs were taken of them, and he was asked questions. And then after that,
What questions was he asked?
I didn't know. I didn't get to listen to the audio, but the police have it.
So there's an audio recording of the interrogation of your father that was made by the Gambian security services.
Exactly. They did that not only with him, but with all the others that they had arrested. And then after doing that, they had to, take them to these rooms where these men have to come with masks over their head, and then they had to torture him. They had to beat him to the point that he couldn't just move or say anything again, and then he couldn't survive it.
Challenging the security forces and her father's killers, Fatimata Sandang took to the streets, protesting the death of her father. This caught the attention of Gambians. Enough is enough, she says. Jammeh needs to go. The violence needs to stop.
How many people have heard that my family or my father or my parents?
Shortly after this video appeared online, security forces went after her. She fled to neighboring Senegal. You took a very public position. You stood up in this road and spoke out publicly against Yahya Jammeh, risking your own life as well. Why did you do that?
I mean, I went to a point where I cared no more. From that day, I wanted to be my father, because he knew Jammeh was still here, but he had to go out and say, we want proper electoral reforms. He wanted a better future for me and the rest of my family, for the rest of the Gambians. So who would I be if I had to keep quiet? I felt that is the only thing I had to do for my father left now. I had to speak up for him. I wanted justice for my father. I wanted Jammeh to just go. I was thinking of what I had gone through within that week, and imagining another Gambian family going through that was unimaginable. So I made sure I did something to stop another family from losing their father like I did. I made sure that I stopped another family from fleeing like I did. So I had to speak up. I had to say something to make sure everybody heard what I was saying, to make sure people went out on the 1st of December to vote him out, to make sure the world knows what he is doing.
Tell us about this incredible role in overthrowing Yahya Jammeh. It seems that the social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, mobile phones played a crucial role that really changed the history of this country.
Social media was a great tool. Even the President Barrow says that. He says, we didn't have access to the radio, the TV when we had to go on campaign. That is the coalition team. But then just knowing when the meetings of the coalitions were going to be, it was up on Facebook, it was on the WhatsApp, so that people can go out, right? So all the other networks, like even international calls, were blocked at some point, and everybody knew that. But with Facebook and then on WhatsApp, then before they blocked it, it was too late. Information was going out already. So everybody was grateful for social media being there, because without it, we wouldn't know how to communicate, how to talk to anybody. So it is one thing that helped change the dictatorship that was in Gambia. It was one tool that many of us used, because personally, I have over 5,000-6,000 friends and people following me on Facebook. So most of those people are in Gambia. So writing on Facebook, they would read it. Having to do live video, they would have to watch it. So those are the things that we used. So I would look for someone else who also has more than 5,000 friends, so we would just be like that. If you're followed that much, you need to speak up. And then we had prominent people, Gambians and young people who were listened to, who put up this message that we need Jammeh out and we need the people of the Gambia to take up the responsibility. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened. It was just a miracle. Calling someone in Gambia by then was risky, because they could arrest you or they could put you in trouble. So we tried to avoid. But then with WhatsApp and Facebook being secure a little, especially WhatsApp, you could send people messages. You could tell them, I had my list of friends and I sent them audios, I sent them messages. They knew what I was going through. They knew what happened in the Gambia. So with some people, just knowing me made them dislike Jammeh for what he was doing. The Gambian population that was so scared to say anything against Jammeh just I don't know, things changed, huh? They changed overnight, and then everybody was like, you know what, I don't care whatever happens, this is my right. And also the campaign period was very important because people were given immunity. You were not going to be touched if you say anything. So people used that to campaign, to put on the shirts of the coalition, just reach out to their families. Personally, people had to call their families back home to say, please vote for the coalition.
Adama Barrow was the coalition candidate for the presidential election. The country's opposition united behind him, hoping to once and for all oust Jammeh through the ballot box. Jammeh held his own rallies, convinced no one would dare to vote against him. As usual, he put on a show. Jammeh believes he has magical powers and could cure people from HIV and AIDS. He created a treatment center inside the State House. He showed Al Jazeera his treatment, a mixture of prayers and concoctions prepared personally. None of those that followed the full therapy survived. Under Jammeh, few would speak about this. Not anymore. Fatou Diatta contracted the virus in 1999. She joined an HIV prevention support group, becoming a vocal advocate. She encouraged people to get medical help. But in 2007, Jammeh announced he found a cure against the virus. He then selected Diatta and other members of the support group for treatment.
We were surprised. It was not easy for us because at that juncture, we cannot say no. You understand what I mean? Because we were just marked by him. He knows us personally, and it was our name that was given to our coordinator that we should go to the treatment, and we cannot say anything against that. So only what we have to do is to take God as one and go to the treatment.
If you had refused his treatment, what would have happened to you?
Maybe they can come for you and force you to go there. Maybe by forcing you to go there, you will not even make it because you will have double stress. You understand what I mean? You will thinking of, I was forced to come here. It was not my intention. And secondly, I am on medication, which you know that I was not used to.
Describe to us your first day in the treatment center.
Oh, terrible. It was very terrible because for me, throughout my life up to that very first day, I was not used to herbal medicine. It was not my way. I was not used to it. So the very first day I took the medication, I think that's where I start to get weak, nausea. Though I was not having diarrhea, but I was nausea, loss of appetite.
So let's backtrack to what treatment you got. What exactly happened in the treatment center, the Yahya Jammeh HIV and AIDS treatment center? What was your days like? What did the doctors do? How did they treat you?
In the morning, if you go, they used to take your vital signs. That is your BP, your HB, your height, your weight. You understand, every day to see whether you are losing weight or you are gaining weight. They take your weight, your BP, your HB, and the like. Then from there, you start drinking the herb.
So it was a potion, some sort of.
Almost a cup full of it, and it's a different type of medicine. But for me, on my own personal view, for me, even if I see him mixing the medication, I start vomiting.
You could see Yahya Jammeh, he would mix the medicine in front of you.
When he start mixing or pouring it in the cup, I start vomiting. So sometimes I just don't look at it, and if I am drinking it, I have to close all my eyes and hold my breath.
What did it taste like?
Though some were very, very bitter. Some were not easy to take because you cannot even remember the taste, finally, to be honest. It was not easy, but God saved us.
How long did you take this herbal treatment for?
It was from January to September, almost 9 months.
How did your health cope with the herbal medicine that Yahya Jammeh gave you?
My health, It was terrible because I was the weakest one there. When I go there, I just automatically drop down. I was staying dry because I couldn't eat and I'm always vomiting. I have no appetite. You know, I was, and even people, the time they start showing us on TV, many people think that I'm going to die there, honestly. Many people think that I'm going to die because I was so weak, because what affected me was that, as I said before, I was not used to herbal medicine.
Was he helped by medical doctors, by foreign nurses?
Yes, he was helped because by then we have some Gambian doctors here who used to be with him in the clinic. They were at RVTH, so he used to take them from the clinic and they come and assist him. And we have a medical doctor who was then by then who was the director of medical services. He was the minister of health, and he is a doctor who was assisting him.
So the Cuban nurses, a certified medical doctor who's also the Minister of Health, and Yahya Jammeh were all administering you this herbal medicine that Jammeh said would cure from HIV and AIDS. You knew that this was not true.
It was not true, definitely. But by then you cannot say anything. You cannot just say it is not true. You cannot just say it. You were staying in a hospital where you have soldiers guiding you. You see?
Soldiers were in the medical facilities.
They were in at Kanifing so that nobody can escape. You understand?
You were being treated against your will. At any times, did you feel like you and the 8 others were guinea pigs?
Yeah, that's what I said before. I said it was a trial. He was just doing a trial to see whether it will work or it will not work. But to me, it is not. Because after that, I have to go back to the hospital. And before I go back to the hospital, my CD4, my immune system was weak. My CD4 automatically dropped. So I know that for me, I don't know others, but for me, I believe that it doesn't work.
Fear of Jammeh ran deep until Adama Barrow's presidential campaign. Thousands took to the streets calling for an end of his regime. Young Gambians, normally apathetic about politics, came out to vote in numbers. As polls closed, the chairman of the Election Commission, Aliyu Njai, saw the numbers rolling in. He was responsible for the final official tally. On December 1st at noon, Njai announced that Yahya Jammeh had lost the elections, stunning Gambians.
You're the first man that stood up to Yahya Jammeh publicly. Tell us what went through your mind when you decided to announce that he was the loser of this presidential elections.
Well, I was just transmitting the will of the people. He never thought that he will lose the election. He never thought that. He was not prepared for that at all. But also, for me, I feel that if the Gambians decide to say, this is it, I need to accept their will and transmit that will and announce the results as they came in.
Now, of course, many people would say that the person who is in your position under Yahya Jammeh's rule is probably the one that has to announce the results that Yahya Jammeh wants.
Well, I don't want to go through that process again, but it was difficult. I tell you, it was very, very difficult. I had undergone stress because there were moves really to get me to change the results. And when you've had changed the results, how people will suffer again under 5 years.
At which point did you realize that Yahya Jammeh had lost the elections?
I'm the last to know. But because he knew he had lost, well before I announced all the results, because I'm the last to know, because the results are collated in the different regions and they are sent by fax to me here. But in each polling station, there are party agents and they would phone their respective offices to let them know the result of the particular polling station. And this is what they always collate. And he knew well in advance that he had lost. And there were prayers for me to increase the number of votes for him to continue. And I refused.
What was his reaction when you refused?
Well, I don't know exactly because he was in state house, I was here. But again, as you already know, the following day, in the evening, he came out plain and accepted that he had lost the elections.
But once you saw the tally and you saw that he had lost, did you pick up your phone, call the State House and tell Yahya Jammeh that he had lost?
I didn't do that. I didn't do that. He knew he had lost, well before I knew. He knew he had lost. Because when they are collated by his own people, that's when he knew he had lost. And that's the move that they had made for me to change the results.
Now, how did they put pressure on you? How did Yahya Jammeh and his people put pressure on you to change the election results?
They were around. They were around. That's something I don't want to go through.
What did they do?
Well, they were here anyway.
Here as in here in the building of the Election Commission, or how were they menacing or threatening you?
They were here anyway. That's what I can say. They were here.
Did they threaten to kill you? Did they?
I'm telling you, they were here. That's what I can say. They were here. Yes, they were here.
And yet, you stood up.
I stood up.
Against them?
I guess, yes, I stood up. I could have lost my life. I stood up. Oh yes, I stood up.
At first, Jammeh accepted the outcome and then changed his mind a week later, calling for a new election. West African heads of state tried to convince him to step down, but he refused, saying the elections were rigged against him. And yet, this is what he said during the campaign.
Our election system is fraud, is rigging proof, is fraud proof. You cannot rig our election. And I want you to go to the counting stations and see how elections are done in this country. Then you know that there's no reason for anybody to go to the streets.
His security forces deployed on the streets, including outside the Election Commission. Fearing for his life, Njai fled the country.
They were coming. They were going to take care of me, that's for sure.
When you say they, you mean the Gambian security forces?
Like everybody, how many people have lost their lives here? I was warned. I was told they are coming. So I had to, it was through President Magsala, through his ambassador, that I was able to leave the country. And when I went, I was given 100% protection through a general. He assigned to me.
Please raise your right hand.
Adama Barrow, the president-elect, too left the country. He was sworn in as the new head of state at the Gambian embassy in Senegal.
I, Adama Barrow.
7,000 West African troops were then deployed to the Senegal-Gambia border. Fighter jets flew low over the capital. Under pressure, Jammeh was forced into exile. He left for Equatorial Guinea. In Banjul Stadium, Adama Barrow was once again sworn into office, this time in front of his people. The horrors of Jammeh's regime are now being unearthed. Political prisoners have been freed. The stories of those that suffered under his regime are now being told. This is a nation still reeling from 22 years of one man's rule. The new government promises to set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission so that the wounds of the past can finally heal.